Tour has been full of good times, but behind the scenes, oh no, they are trying to manage a royal mess.
Oh boy.
Kate Middleton and Prince William kicked off the first full day of their Caribbean tour on Sunday with dubbed a charm offensive, an attempt to sway Caribbean nations to hang on to the monarchy.
Kate Middleton and Prince William have canceled the first stop on their Caribbean tour.
Of Cambridge were scheduled to visit a village in Belize, but had to cancel the visit after residents protested the royal trip.
Nations to separate from the British monarchy will be supported by the UK with pride and respect.
Touched on their headline-making tour, which sparked protests and growing tension related to the history of the monarch.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have received mixed reactions from their Caribbean hosts.
William is holding crisis talks following widespread criticism of the Caribbean tour last month.
But in a small village in Belize, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are simply not welcome.
The English-speaking Caribbean, it's a traumatic and brutal legacy.
A crime against humanity.
Rosalie Hamilton was the first to sign an open letter denouncing
landing in a neighborhood football field. Residents are said to have not been consulted. In addition,
due to sensitive issues involving the community in Indian Creek, the visit has been moved to a different location.
A royal disaster. The couple facing protests and thrust into a debate about removing the Queen.
We think of reparations as a way of gaining justice.
Have rejected the Cambridge's visit and called for them to right the wrongs of slavery.
There is a moment, quiet, unannounced, when a monarch decides whether someone is truly ready to carry the weight of the crown. Not ready in the way press offices announce. Not ready in the way palace aides train you to be. Ready in the way the Queen measured people. Privately, slowly, without ceremony. Richard Kay, one of the most respected royal commentators of the past 4 decades, has spoken about what that process actually looked like when it came to Catherine. And what he described is not the version most people know, because by the time William and Catherine boarded that plane to the Caribbean in March 2022, by the time the tour that was meant to celebrate 70 years of the Queen's reign began unraveling on the world stage, the Queen already knew something about Catherine that the public was only beginning to see. She had known it for years. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. The Caribbean tour of March 2022 was never supposed to be complicated. It was designed as a celebration. 8 days across Belize, Jamaica, and the Bahamas, a Platinum Jubilee tour in the Queen's honor, sent out in her name, carried by the couple the palace had quietly positioned as the monarchy's most reliable public face. William and Catherine had done this before. They knew the rhythm of royal tours. They understood what was expected of them. What they could not have fully anticipated was the atmosphere waiting for them. Protests met them in Belize before they even unpacked. In Jamaica, the Prime Minister looked directly at William during a formal dinner and told him, without diplomatic softening, that his country intended to become a republic. Images from the tour, William and Catherine riding in the back of an open Land Rover, separated from the crowd behind a metal fence, circulated worldwide within hours. The optics were brutal. Commentators reached for colonial-era comparisons. The tour that was meant to demonstrate the monarchy's modern warmth became, almost overnight, a case study in everything critics said was wrong with Britain's relationship with the Commonwealth. And through all of it, Catherine stood steady, not performing steadiness, not gripping a smile and pushing through. There was something in how she moved through those days, the entrails and the composure, the attentiveness, the instinct for what each moment actually required, that people noticed even in the chaos. It did not look like training, it looked like character. The Queen had seen that character long before the cameras did. To understand why this tour hit with such force, you have to understand what the palace believed it was walking into. Barbados had removed the Queen as head of state just 4 months earlier, in November 2021. The ceremony was formal, dignified, and watched by the world. Prince Charles attended on the Queen's behalf. The message was clear. A Commonwealth nation had looked at the monarchy and decided, quietly and without drama, that it no longer needed it. That decision sent a ripple through every remaining realm that had not yet made the same move. Jamaica was already in open conversation about following. The country's prime minister had said publicly, months before the tour began, that Jamaica becoming a republic was not a question of whether but when. William and Catherine were flying directly into that conversation, representing an institution that significant portions of their destination countries viewed not as a symbol of shared history, but as a symbol of something they were actively working to leave behind. The palace understood the sensitivity. The briefings would have been thorough. But no briefing prepares you for standing in a formal receiving line while protest signs are visible through the window behind you. No amount of preparation makes the Land Rover photograph less striking once it has already been taken. What you need in that moment, what the palace needed Catherine to have, was not a script. It was judgment, steadiness, the ability to stay present and dignified when the context around you is making dignity difficult. The Queen had spent years quietly confirming that Catherine possessed exactly that. Richard Kay has spent decades covering the royal family from the inside. He is not a commentator who trades in speculation or manufactures proximity to the palace. He is someone who has earned the trust of multiple generations of that family, and whose observations carry the weight of genuine access. In the Channel 5 documentary, Kate and the Queen, A Special Relationship, Kay spoke with unusual directness about the nature of Queen Elizabeth's private judgment. He said the Queen grew to trust Kate, but he was careful to explain what that actually meant, because the Queen's trust was not something freely or quickly given. "I don't think she really trusted anyone on first impression," Kay said. "We're all performing the same show. The show is supporting the Queen, but with Kate and the Queen, it grew deeper than that. There was a real grandmotherly affection between the two." Read that carefully, because what Kay is describing is not simply warmth. He is describing a progression from performance to something genuine, from a young woman learning the rules of the institution to a woman the Queen had privately taken stock of and found worthy of her real regard. That distinction mattered to Queen Elizabeth more than almost anything else. She had lived through enough to know the difference between someone who performed loyalty and someone who actually possessed the qualities loyalty required. She had watched people come into the family with great fanfare and leave with great noise. She had seen what happened when the gap between public performance and private character became too wide to hold, and the process by which she assessed whether someone was genuinely trustworthy was slow, deliberate, and entirely her own. What did that assessment actually look like in practice? Royal biographer Ingrid Seward, who also contributed to the documentary, offered a detail that sharpens the picture considerably. She said the Queen saw her strength, and not just strength in the abstract. Seward was specific. The Queen saw that Catherine was a caring person who had this amazing affiliation to duty. Affiliation to duty. That phrase is worth sitting with, because duty, in the Queen's world, was not a word used lightly. It was the organizing principle of her entire life. She had given up any claim to a private self in service of it. She had watched members of her own family struggle with it, walk away from it, treat it as negotiable, and she had watched Catherine, quietly, over years, move in the opposite direction. The Queen made a rare decision. She chose to mentor Catherine personally. Seward described it plainly. Elizabeth set aside time in her schedule, a schedule that was genuinely one of the most demanding in the world, to guide her grandson's wife through the private language of royal life, the things that cannot be found in a briefing document, the instincts that take years to develop, how to read a room full of people who are performing for you, how to stay warm without revealing anything you cannot afford to reveal, how to carry an institution's weight without letting it show on your face. Those conversations happened over afternoon tea, a routine the two women developed while William and Catherine still lived at Kensington Palace, close enough to Buckingham Palace for the journey to be easy. There was nothing ceremonial about it. No aides recording the exchange. Just the Queen and the woman who would one day carry the crown in her name, talking in the private way that the Queen reserved for people she had decided to let in. That kind of access was not offered casually. The Queen extended it because she had reached a private conclusion about who Catherine actually was. And she was investing in what she believed Catherine would become. And that conclusion had been forming for a long time. The Caribbean tour took place in the final months of Queen Elizabeth's life. She died in September 2022. 6 months after William and Catherine returned from those 8 difficult days in Belize, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. The Queen did not travel herself. Her health would not allow it. So she sent the couple she trusted most to carry the Platinum Jubilee message to the Commonwealth in her name. That decision was not administrative. It was a statement of confidence. The palace had other options. Other royals were available, but the Queen specifically sent William and Catherine. And the choice reflected exactly what Richard Kay described, a trust that had been built gradually, tested quietly, and confirmed through years of private observation. What the world saw during that tour was the crisis. What the Queen already knew was the woman underneath it. When the Land Rover photographs went around the world, when the Jamaican Prime Minister delivered his Republic announcement in front of the cameras, when commentators questioned whether the tour had done more damage than good. Through all of it, Catherine did not retreat. She did not deflect. She continued to engage, with warmth, with attentiveness, with the kind of presence that cannot be manufactured in a media training session. Those who watched her closely during those days said afterward that she appeared to understand something the headlines missed, that the tour's difficulties were not personal failures, but historical pressures that predated her by centuries. Her job was to represent the monarchy with dignity in spite of those pressures, not to pretend they did not exist. The Queen would have recognized that instinct immediately. There is a particular kind of strength that only becomes visible under pressure, in ordinary circumstances, at garden parties, at charity engagements, at the carefully choreographed events that fill a royal calendar. Almost anyone can appear composed. The protocol is clear. The expectations are known. The path through each moment is marked out in advance. The Caribbean tour was different. The ground kept shifting. Decisions had to be made in real time. The context was hostile in ways that no advance briefing could fully prepare for. And yet the woman the Queen had privately mentored, privately assessed, privately concluded was ready, showed up in exactly the way the Queen had anticipated she would. Kay's account suggests that this was not a surprise to the palace, not to those who had seen what the Queen saw. The surprise was entirely for the outside world, for the commentators and critics who had spent years debating whether Catherine had the depth the role would eventually require. The Queen had settled that question years earlier. She had sat with Catherine over afternoon tea. She had observed how Catherine approached the children, her own grandchildren, the future heirs of the crown. She had watched how Catherine navigated the internal pressures of the family, the external pressures of the press, the quiet daily discipline of a life lived entirely in public. And she had concluded, in the private way that was entirely her own, that this was someone who understood what the show required, and who could carry it without being broken by it. Palace insiders who spoke to journalists in the weeks after the Caribbean tour returned noticed something. The criticism directed at the palace's handling of the trip, the logistics, the imagery, the messaging, was sharp. But the criticism almost never landed on Catherine personally. Observers who had been skeptical of the tour's optics still separated her conduct from the institutional failures around it. That distinction was not accidental. It was the product of exactly the kind of presence the Queen had been watching develop for more than a decade. That judgment matters now more than most people have taken the time to consider. Because the Caribbean tour did not end the conversation about the Commonwealth and the monarchy. If anything, it accelerated it. Jamaica's intentions were now formally declared on the world stage. The questions the tour exposed were not resolved. They were made louder. And through all of it, the woman carrying the monarchy's public face has been Catherine. Not just as a supporting figure, not just as the Princess of Wales standing beside her husband at formal occasions, as someone who has, in the years since the Queen's death, become, in the eyes of many who watch the institution closely, exactly what the Queen saw she would become. The anchor. Richard Kay's account does something important when placed alongside the history of that Caribbean tour. It moves Catherine out of the frame of the crisis, where she is simply another element of a difficult week, and places her in a longer story. One the Queen had been quietly following for years, one the Queen believed she already knew the ending to, and the ending, as it turned out, was not the Land Rover photograph. It was not the protests in Kingston or the diplomatic discomfort in Nassau. The ending, or at least the chapter the Queen had already written in her own private assessment, was of a woman who would carry the weight of the crown when the weight became real. The Queen did not live to see the full extent of what she had recognized. She died on September 8, 2022, at Balmoral. Within days, Catherine was in the crowds outside Sandringham, reading cards left by strangers, kneeling to speak to children who had come to grieve. It was unscripted, it was unrehearsed, and it was immediately clear to everyone watching that something had shifted, that the woman who had just lost her grandmother-in-law was also, in the same moment, stepping forward to hold the institution together. That was not learned in the preceding days. That was the character Richard Kay described, the one the Queen had spent years quietly observing, slowly trusting, and privately confirming was exactly what it appeared to be. What the Queen already knew before the Caribbean tour tested it in public was this, that Catherine would not break under the weight of the crown, that when the tour went wrong, and it did go wrong, the woman carrying it would hold. She was right, and the Caribbean crisis, for all the headlines it generated, was in the end less a failure of the monarchy's image and more a proof of the Queen's judgment. Whatever difficulties still lie ahead for the institution, and there are many, the woman the Queen quietly mentored, privately assessed, and ultimately trusted is the one standing at its center. The Queen saw that coming. She saw it long before the cameras did. If this story gave you a different way of seeing what happened during those 8 days in March 2022, and what the Queen had already known long before then, make sure you subscribe to Royal Archives. There is much more of this kind of storytelling here. The private moments, the private words, the private judgments that shaped the monarchy we see today, stories the headlines miss, history that deserves to be told properly.